Blog Talk Radio.
Well, welcome to the show. This is Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, and I am Carol the Coach, and we do the Sex Help with Carol the Coach show here. And I am so happy to be with you tonight. I am just amazed at what's going on in the world of sexual addiction, and I want to spread the word of what I believe can help when people truly have an issue that is very, very difficult for them to deal with. You know, they don't know where to turn. They feel a lot of shame and guilt. And I'm here to help. I've made it my mission. I have said that I will do whatever is possible. So if you are listening to this show live, I want to give you a number, and you can feel free to call me at 646-595-3284. Again, that is 646-595-3284. And this is a show that can help you deal with the kind of questions you may have about whether you have a sexual addiction. And if you suspect you do, what can you do about it? When do you talk to your partner? When do you not talk to your partner? And if you don't have a partner, you know, how do you survive this addiction and get help? Now, for somebody like me, I'm a certified counselor. I'm a therapist. And I got to tell you, it seems very easy for me to know that there is lots of help out there for you. There are many ways that you can get education, you can get therapy, and you can get support. However, I got to tell you that for the majority of people, they don't know anything about sexual addiction other than what they may have seen in the media. You know, I remember when I was getting training and that whole Tiger Woods scandal came out. And that was really very difficult because truly what that meant was that, you know, Tiger had an altercation with his wife. And it looked like he had a lot of girlfriends. She was very jealous. She had seen his cell phone. She knew that he was in contact with other women. And from the outside looking in, although we know that we don't know the real scoop, it appeared that they had had some words about that prior to the altercation that occurred where she took, was it a golf club to his car? I don't know. He was trying to leave, and it was just very, very difficult for both of them. And I remember being in training for sexual addiction, and clearly a lot of people, when they heard that that's what I was doing, they very significantly said to me, hey, Tiger was just doing what every red-blooded man does. Yep, that's right, what every red-blooded man does. He wasn't any different from anybody else. Okay, so here he is. He's not any different from anybody else. And, you know, what I knew to be true was that, yes, you know, the rich and famous may have accessibility and availability, but if they've committed to a monogamous relationship and they cannot stay faithful, then that's a problem. And that is why you're listening to the Carol the Coach Show. Because truly, you know, people may not know what to do. And when you don't know what to do, you wonder what's real, what isn't, what's normal, and what might you do to make things better. So I have dedicated this Monday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time to helping you figure out what is it that you need to do when you suspect that you may have a problem that seems obsessive and compulsive. It's very difficult to actually know. And as a result, I'm here to help you with that. Again, give me a call at 1-646-595-3284 if you think you might have a problem with sexual addiction or you have somebody in your life that may also have that problem. Okay, now I got to tell you about some emails that I got this week. I got an email from a woman who said, Carol, due to the footprint of what sexual intercourse looks like, feels like to men, I'm wondering, are they able to normally perform with their wives? If a man has a sexual addiction, can he perform? Could the realization of what they have done, the guilt and shame they may have felt, prevent performance? Then she writes, this has been going on with my husband and I for over 12 years. Even with Viagra, Cialis, and other enhancement drugs. I am concerned. I've asked him about whether he can perform, if it's a sexual addiction issue or something else. And then she says on the side, I asked him to get some condoms for my safety, and he would not. She says, a few kisses and manual stimulation by him, and I am done. I did ask him to have his back to the dresser mirror so as not to have any visual, thereby focusing on the woman he married. Unfortunately, the last 2 times we had sex, they were 2 soft attempts. I was sore and did not want any more. This addiction is very deep stuff. Please help. Okay, well, here's what I got to say. I emailed her, and she said her husband was in his late 50s. And I explained to her that men who are probably of the age of 45 or later tend to have erectile problems anyway. So it's really hard to determine if your husband, if you suspect your husband has some sexual addiction issues, it's hard to know, is it physiological? Is he just getting of the age where it is very difficult to stay erect and to have an orgasm? Or has he trained his brain to a certain type of pornography, and therefore he can't become erect or get stimulated without it? Now, I know this probably sounds very unusual to somebody who's listening. But it is true. When you've looked at porn for a long period of time, you desensitize what used to be a turn-on when it was between you and your partner, and you've sensitized erotic porn as being the stimulus that actually makes you feel hard and erect. Okay, what does that mean? That means that it is imperative that you stop porn to rule out, is it porn or is it your age? Now, for some men, maybe they had erectile dysfunction prior to them ever looking at porn. Well, we can say, okay, for that person, it probably is a physiological problem. But for the man who is the age of 45 and older, it really might be physiological. What do? Well, this woman said, gosh, we've tried Cialis and Viagra, and to no avail. It has not helped. He stayed soft, and she's sore. Well, how many days, weeks, months, or years has he been without pornographic stimulation, or he's been without being with another person? Because that is always the first course of action. And you know what? If a couple is really working on their sexuality and there is the possibility of sexual addiction, you do not want to stimulate in any other way but the woman. Therefore, I commend this woman who automatically knew that she did not want her husband looking at anything other than her. And I'm going to tell you something for anybody who is listening to the show. If you have a partner and you're wanting to improve the connection you have with him or her, it's important for you to have open eyes sex. That means you keep your eyes open and you watch your partner. You actually stay very in touch with what we call sensate focus, and that is what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you smell, and what you taste. When you stay in the moment, and that is so important when you're exploring sexuality, when you stay in the moment and you pay attention to your 5 senses, you're much more likely to get more out of sexuality with that person. And so open eyes sex is the most intimate type of sexuality that there is. Now, if you have some questions about this or you have any other questions, give me a call at 646-595-3284. I'd be more than happy to take your calls. You know, I am your own personal psychotherapist. I do have a certification in sexual addiction. That means I spent 10,000 hours and $10,000 in training. Okay, now it's not quite that much in hours or in the cost, but it's almost, because we not only do 4 modules of 3 and 4 day trainings. That's a lot of trainings. These modules are 8, 10, 12-hour trainings per day, and we do them for 3 days. But we also do group supervision, where we have to actually go to somebody who's a supervisor and be a part of supervision, and we do telephone supervision. We spend lots of money to be able to be trained to know how to help you. So again, that number is 646-595-3284. Okay, now as I look at this email, she also says that she has asked her partner to get condoms for her safety, and he would not. Now, I emailed her and said, has he had an AIDS and sexually transmitted disease test? And she said yes, and it was negative. Well, that's good. Probably before they have sex, they need to be together and with condoms, and then he needs to be tested again in 3 months and tested again in 6 months, just to make sure that everything is safe for her. So I'm sad and surprised that he won't wear condoms for her safety. If that's going to make her feel comfortable, my belief system is, and this is what I train my guys and my women that are sexual addicts, you know, when you're in recovery and when you're really working on healthy sexuality, you need to bend over backwards for your partner. You do whatever it takes to make him or her feel safe and secure. So that man should be wearing condoms, even if it detracts a tiny bit from sex. And you can see that his problem is that he has trouble having erections anyway. So I'm sure he's like going, I don't want to wear condoms because it's going to take away from the stimulation, and it's going to make it more difficult for me to have an orgasm or even to get hard. Well, I get that, but she needs to be safe. So, if they were working with me, I would ask them to pleasure each other with everything but sex. And by that I mean sexual intercourse and even oral sex. You can get sexually transmitted diseases from oral sex. It's much more rare, but it is possible. So I would say, practice touching each other. Practice finding out what feels good for the other person. What do you need to do to actually make the other person feel sexy, sensual, and stimulated? And then do that. As a partner, do you know where those erotic zones are in your partner? Is it behind the ear? Is it in between the groin area? Is it in the creases of your thighs, under the arms, the nipples, the breasts, below the testicles? What is it? And then you need to practice pleasuring your partner in safe ways until you absolutely can be sure that sex is safe. No one should ever take that chance of getting any kind of sexually transmitted disease. So stay strong and steadfast on that. And then she says that obviously she wants to be safe and that she knows that this addiction is very deep stuff. Well, she's absolutely right, and she's right about the shame and guilt that accompanies sexual addiction. And so it is imperative that, she requests what she needs, but she doesn't humiliate, embarrass, or attack her partner, because that's not going to create sexual intimacy. That's only going to create sexual distance. And truly, when a couple is healing from sexual addiction, they want to look for ways to be close. Okay, so thank you to our emailer who had some good questions about sexuality. And then I got this other email, and it said, Dear Carol, I listened to some of the podcasts today, and I'm very concerned that I qualify as a sex addict based on the diagnostic criteria listed. I am definitely committed to doing something about the problem. I recognize that for several reasons I must deal with this issue. He said, the stuff about shame that you talked about really struck me. I have kept these areas of my life a secret. I have never gone to a prostitute, escort service, or anything else involving anyone else. But I do have an S&M fetish in which I am a submissive. As you stated on your podcast, it has gotten progressively worse. I look at Internet websites devoted to femdom. As you also stated, it has gotten more progressive. I also hide what I do. I delete my histories. I have filters on my desktop and laptop, but not on my iPhone. No one else knows, not my wife, not my children, no one. The shame is overwhelming and has been getting worse after each additional offense. It's interesting. He doesn't end there, but I'm going to just stop for a second. It's interesting because I was telling my sexual addiction group tonight that sexual addiction is auto-exacerbating. That means that, you may feel some sort of stress or anger or sadness. And as a result, you feel the need to medicate by using sex. Maybe that's pornography. Maybe that's prostitution. Maybe that's chat rooms. maybe that's I shouldn't say just, maybe that's objectifying women, which means you look at women at the office, in catalogs, on TV, at the mall, and you start fantasizing. And this can be for men too, for men that enjoy looking at men, or for women that enjoy looking at men. Objectification occurs obviously with either sex. So, but for sake of it being easy, so you start the progression of obsessing, and you medicate by using sex. And so you maybe have that drink, and then you watch that video or get on the internet and watch some porn. And then maybe you check into a chat room and you call somebody and you chat with them, or you talk with them, and you get stimulated and you masturbate. And then maybe you take it that next level and you agree to meet. Regardless, when that activity is done, you feel terrible about yourself. And once you feel terrible, there's that period of shame, guilt, sadness, and depression. And you deal with that, and you swear to God you're never going to do it again, and you hate yourself for going through it again, and for violating your own values and your own mores and your own norms. And then you feel so bad that the only thing you can think of to do is to medicate again with sex. And so you get back into that cycle of sexual addiction. And what we know about that cycle is that oftentimes prior to the actual acting out, prior to calling an escort, prior to visiting a prostitute, prior to getting on the internet, there is some activity that is linked to the actual sexual addiction. Maybe you put on your makeup. I was talking to a woman who's a sex addict, and bless her heart, she's in a treatment center right this minute. It's her second time. She may need 3 times because all she can think about is sex, 24/7. When she's with her kids, she thinks about sex. When she's at work, she thinks about sex. When she's having sex with her husband, she's thinking about sex. And she said when she gets out her makeup, pulls that drawer open, and starts to apply the makeup, that begins the sexual turn-on. And that is actually as stimulating as the actual sex. Other people I've talked to say, boy, when I hear the cling and the clang of the ice in the glass, I know what's coming next, and that is a turn-on. Or I hear the bath water running, and I know that I'm getting ready for that sexual encounter, and that is part of the turn-on. Okay, so those things kind of fuse and mingle together and create that whole sexual addiction experience. So I'm not at all surprised when this guy says that the shame is overwhelming and he's been getting worse after each additional offense. He says, I am ready to deal with this. I am going to download the sexaddicttreatment.net stuff. I am serious. I so much want to take care of this without getting my wife involved. I am so ashamed, and I am afraid that if she finds out, she will divorce me, and I will end up alone and miserable. I have a 12-year-old child. I am an observant Jew, and no one in my community knows. Well, before I continue on, I got to tell you that I'm glad he is downloading the sex addict treatment stuff, .net stuff. I have no idea what that is, but I'm sure that it's good information. And I would encourage him to go to www.sexhelp.com to get more information, because that is absolutely a website that I endorse. It is Patrick Carnes' website, and it has information for resources and books and all sorts of things. But as I was telling, unfortunately, you guys, you people on Monday night get me after I've done my sexual addiction group. And the guys that I was talking to tonight, like one of the men, he said, Carol, I looked at porn this week, and I told my wife I want to go to a meeting tomorrow. And by a meeting, he's referencing the SSA group, the Sexual Addicts Anonymous group, SAA group. And interestingly enough, he said, I don't want to tell her that I've gotten online. It will hurt her. It'll make her sad. She'll get nervous. She'll not trust me. And what I tried to explain to the group is that that's a normal feeling to want to do everything by yourself. And it's also normal to want to keep these things hidden from your spouse. However, whenever you're in an intimate relationship and you want to hide something from your spouse, it is going to affect your intimacy level. And we know that sexual addiction in and of itself is an intimacy disorder. So I always ask that you be honest. You bring it out in the open, you deal with the consequences, and you face your fears head on. I really believe that's absolutely imperative to healthy functioning. So when he says, I'm not telling anybody, he says, I have a 12-year-old, and I'm an observant Jew. No one in my community knows, and I'm afraid that if she finds out, she will divorce me. His real fear, as he indicated, is that he will end up alone and miserable. Boy, I get that. And yet, you know what? He is alone and miserable. That's the reality of the situation. So I would encourage him to go to that website, www.sexhelp.com. And what I would encourage him to do is to look for a certified sexual addictions therapist in his area. Somebody who knows how to deal with not only his addiction, but will help him and his wife to know what to do to get healthier. And that is really important in developing good, close bonding. Now, I've got several different techniques that will make you have some skills in how to develop that intimacy with your wife, and we're going to be talking about those tonight. I know that you're really lost. You don't necessarily know what to do to make your life better, and that's why, again, I am so happy that you have tuned in to Sex Help with Carol the Coach. I would encourage you to go to both of my websites, my normal website, for people that just want to take their life to the next level. That's called www.carolthecoach.com. And I have over 600 articles in the form of blogs that will take your life to the next level. And then, for more specialized help, I would go to www.sexhelpwithcarolthecoach and take a look at not only what I have written and recorded, but also what many of my clients have contributed to the website. I think it is so important to use other people's expertise. And that's what this show is all about. I mean, let's face it, I interview experts in this field all the time. Because, the great thing about this show is not only are you learning, but I'm learning too. So if you're listening live and you haven't downloaded this from iTunes, which is really an incredible thing, you can download every show I have by going to iTunes and putting in Sex Addiction with Carol the Coach. Or you can go to www.blogtalkradio.com/Sex Help with Carol the Coach and download shows that way. Because what I'm interested in doing is disseminating information that can help you to improve your life. It's important for many different reasons. Now, I know that at times your life can feel out of control. And in a recent column that I wrote for an Indianapolis magazine, I said that life can feel so cumbersome and overwhelming when you are in a job you don't like, or you're rearing a difficult kid who's making poor decisions, or you're dealing with a spouse who is not communicative, or you have a secret that you feel too guilty to share with others. Now, you know that scenario. You believe that you've done everything possible to activate a positive outcome, but to no avail. Maybe you've tried to stop sexual addiction, and it just hasn't worked. Or maybe the rest of your life is falling apart too. When somebody has a sexual addiction, they can't concentrate at work. They're not nearly as focused on their mental and physical health. And so I talk about something called faith. And clearly in SAA or SA meetings, which are 12-step groups for sex addicts, you learn that ultimately you have to have more faith. And I'm going to give you some examples, okay? So let's just talk about life in general. Okay. You know the scenario. You believe that you've done everything possible to activate a positive outcome, but your drug-addicted child who's been through treatment seems to have gotten nothing out of the treatment. Or your disengaged husband or wife refuses to go to church or counseling despite your neutral requests or your badgering. Maybe you hate your job. You've sent out over 30 resumes, and you're not getting any responses back. Perhaps you've paid for career counseling, you've networked, and you've shared with all your friends and family what you would like in your new job, but it's as if the economy has stifled you from being able to go after your dreams. Has any of these things happened to you? You feel like you have few options, life is becoming more and more stressful, and you are medicating with sexual addiction? Maybe you've tried everything and literally it seems like nothing is working for you. Well, this is oftentimes when I ask people to practice reframing and faith. When nothing seems to be working, you need to continue to create action plans, but inevitably you also need to increase belief that things are working out exactly the way it was intended, so that you remind yourself that in finding the answers, you'll be growing stronger and you'll be developing more faith. And 12-step programs are literally based on your connection to a higher power. That is the beautiful thing. It is absolutely believing in your higher power. So, I ask you to think about a stressful situation that you are currently facing in your own life. Maybe you've tried everything to turn it around or to make it better to no avail. Now, the circumstances I just talked about call for drastic measures, and the drastic measure is to practice surrender and faith. Think about it. How would your life be different if you emanated faith that things were going to work out for the best, no matter what the issues? You actually walked around telling yourself that it was all going to work out because you believe that you have done everything possible, and now you're going to practice the greatest of spiritual practices by having faith that everything happens and it has a purpose, and that purpose serves a higher good for the people who are struggling. Now, you can't just have that faith. That means that if you believe you have a sexual addiction, you need to email the show or you need to give me a call at 646-595-3284. You need to find yourself a certified sexual addictions therapist by going to www.sexhelp.com. You need to start doing some readings, and I highly recommend Out of the Shadows by Patrick Carnes, or getting his workbook called Facing the Shadows by, again, the same author, Patrick Carnes. There's a million books out there, and they're all very good, but that is a great starter. Perhaps get the book, SAA. You can get on the website, Sexual Addicts Anonymous, and order that book, and it will help you to determine whether you do have a sexual addiction. So you've done all these steps. You've gotten the certified sexual addictions therapist. You've gone to SAA. You're doing your reading. You've gotten your sponsor. Maybe you're in a therapy group. Maybe you can't stop by yourself, so you decide you need to go to the Meadows, which is a treatment center in Phoenix for sexual addiction and other addictions. Or maybe go to the ranch in Tennessee. Maybe you go out to Keystone in Pennsylvania. Maybe you go to SRI in California. There are facilities all over the country now that handle sexual addiction. If you need to know where they are, who are the contact people, email me at carolthecoach@AOL.com, and I will certainly get you to the right people. But once you've done all that action, then you actually have to tell yourself that it is all going to work out, and you have to stop the cycle that we talked about earlier that's auto-exacerbating, where you feel shame, guilt, and blame. And you have to believe that a higher power is going to help you out with this, and that if you're doing what you need to do, it is all going to work out for the best. So instead of going into the normal attitude of nothing ever works out for you, or life is too darn hard, you're tired of the struggle, you move into a shift of belief in 3 very powerful tools. I'm going to talk to you about what they are. The first tool is surrender. When you know you have done everything, then you get to take a step back and just breathe and believe that you're exactly where you need to be. Wow, and if you're listening to my show, you're a sex addict. And if you're a sex addict, it's probably very hard for you to breathe and believe that you're exactly where you need to be. But I got to tell you, right now I have a sexual addictions group going with 8 men, actually 9 men, and they are in the process of being better human beings, and they are amazing. And I'm not just saying that because I'm their therapist. They are working hard on their recovery. They're working hard on doing the right thing. They are learning how to communicate, how to handle their anger, how to use assertiveness. I mean, they're amazing, amazing guys. And that's why I highly recommend them to other people when people need somebody to call. So just surrender. So again, surrendering means when you know you've done everything, you get to take a step back and just breathe and believe that you are exactly where you need to be. Then you practice the art of faith. And faith involves having the positive mental attitude, PMA, that things are going to work out for the best. No matter what. Your wife walks out on you, things are going to work out for the best. The police come and confiscate your computer because of your pornography use, things are going to work out for the best. You get arrested because you've been to a prostitute, things are going to work out for the best. That is true faith. So you surrender, you believe and breathe that you're exactly where you need to be, and you use faith, which, of course, that involves PMA, positive mental attitude. And then the last thing you do is you reframe. You remind yourself that you are growing stronger and that this will teach you something about yourself that you need to learn. So remind yourself that you are growing stronger and that this is going to teach you something about yourself that you need to learn. And when you look at it as a life lesson, you don't feel like such a victim. You feel like you are in the process of getting some information that you desperately need to make your life better. So write those things down if you would. Surrender, faith, and reframing. Because it's very important. And then give yourself the homework assignment to think about a stressful situation that you're currently facing in your own life with your own sexual addiction. And you heard me tell you that, again, the tools are to go to an SA or an SAA meeting, and you can look up Sexual Addicts Anonymous or Sex Anonymous and find out what meetings are in your city. They have telephone meetings if there are none, so that you can never say there are none because you can just call an 800 number to get to the meeting. Go to www.sexhelp.com and find a certified sexual addictions therapist. And if there are none in your area, there are some that will possibly do Skype with you. Go to my website, www.sexhelp.com. Well, actually, it's sexhelpwithcarolthecoach.com. Email me at carolthecoach@aol.com. Get a sponsor. When you go to SAA or SA, start doing your literature reading. Again, that I asked you to read Out of the Shadows or Facing the Shadows, which is a workbook, both by Patrick Carnes, Ph.D., and start that action plan. And just remember to surrender to the belief that you're exactly where you need to be, to have the faith that things are happening for the right reason, and to reframe and know that there's a life lesson you're learning and you're going to be a better person because of it. And when you do that, you will make your life better. And that's what I really encourage you to do. Why? Because I feel that it's imperative to your own mental health. And you're not going to get healthier, you're not going to work on your sexual addiction until you really work on an action plan and on a mental attitude that makes your life different. Make sense? I certainly hope so. So, I feel so honored to be with you tonight, and I want you to know that this is the only show on the Internet, at least that I'm aware of, that deals with sexual addiction. And again, you can always email me at www.carolthecoach.com. I am here for you. So I really encourage you to take that next step and get the help that you deserve, because clearly it isn't going to happen unless you make it happen. And, you know, I always do say, hey, there's plenty of things to deal with in your life, whether you be a woman who thinks that maybe her husband has a sexual addiction, or if you're a person who is beginning to suffer from that, you just feel like your behavior is getting more and more obsessive and compulsive. All you're doing is thinking about that sexual activity. This is a very sexualized society, and we spend a lot of time seeing things unconsciously that have to do with sex. And if you've experienced a trauma, if you've been abused in your life, if you've been physically, emotionally, or sexually abused, you more than likely have an issue that needs to be addressed. And there's lots of things that you can do to address that issue. Getting in with a good therapist would help you. But if that sexual behavior is out of control, not every therapist knows what to do with it, and that's why we highly recommend that you get the help you need. So, I always end the show by saying, there will only be one of you at all times. Fearlessly have the courage to be yourself. And next week we have a great show. We have Elaine and John Leadham, who run Leadham Counseling. I am so excited. I've had them on the show several times. They have a lot to share. And I've just recently had a client that I've been with for a couple of years, and they're moving to New Jersey, where John and Elaine are from. And I've been able to refer them to them. And I just really think, wow, it's wonderful when you know that you can make a referral to somebody who really gets sexual addiction. And the Leadhams are quality people, and they're going to be talking about how to enhance your relationship, what you need to do to have more intimacy in the relationship, as well as what you need to do to actually work on yourself in such a way that you are one in the spirit. As a matter of fact, that is the book that they have written, One in the Spirit. It's a meditation course for recovering couples. It does more than merely talk about intimacy. John and Elaine have offered a gift for all couples serious about relationship intimacy. And their book is practical, directional, and inspirational for couples. Claudia Black, who is an incredible addictionologist, she just has worked so hard on codependency and addiction issues. She highly recommends this book. And they're in the process of writing another one, but this book is really amazing because each week, truly each day, they talk about a topic and they give you a challenge, a reflection, and a prayer. So, for instance, I'm looking at this week, it's on plans, not expectations. And by that I mean, I said that they'll talk about the challenge. And they say none of us can accurately predict or control the future. Amen. No, that's me saying amen. We can try to manipulate the variables in life to have a certain desired outcome. But more times than not, the ending is not what we desired. And isn't that the serenity prayer? God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, to have the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Exactly. Many of us will direct our behavior in the lives of those close to us in an effort to avoid repeating the past. We want to be rid of the life we had and not look back. We are cautioned to learn from our past or be doomed by it. So why do we run from it? Well, that's the challenge. The reflection is when we run from the past, it will teach us nothing. When we attempt to manipulate the future, the harvest will be unfulfilling. We need to examine our past loves to better understand how to love fully today. We must trust our future to God's care if we want to avoid making the same mistakes. An understanding of our past will generate the calm you need today to allow the gifts of the future to be revealed. And the prayer for week number 36, Plans Not Expectations, is, God help me to be honest about where I have been so the future will hold promise and not fear. And boy, I use this methodology. I say, have low expectations. As a matter of fact, have no expectations, which means that I tell people, you know what, put it out there, but do it in a way where you don't expect a certain outcome. Because A, you never know how God wants to use our situation and create His own outcome. And B, when we're depending on other people, we're not going to have the same outcome that they would have. So I'm really looking forward to interviewing them again next week as they help us to get closer to developing intimacy in our own life. Again, look forward to John and Elaine Leadham, who have written One in the Spirit, meditation course for recovering couples. And if you want to take a look at the work that they are doing, they're an amazing couple that have been married a pretty long time. And you can go to www.leadhamcounseling.com. Okay, so I said there'll only be one of you at all times. Fearlessly have the courage to be yourself. I know it was the holidays. I know that this might have been a rough time for you. But I want you to be authentic and transparent this week. That's your homework, as well as the homework of thinking of a stressful situation and applying the 3 words, surrendering, faith, and reframing. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, at 9 o'clock on Mondays for more of Sex Help with Carol the Coach. Have a great day.